because it is really pretty. I think they live out by the beach there.
Yeah. I quite comfortable.
And how that ever came.
So just maybe not until.
Yeah.
I do. You don't use that.
Yeah, right. We live in a paranoid culture. So
Nice to meet you.
it's not a good. It's not a good.
Nice.
It's not a good place.
Ron Rubeck saved him.
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally.
Think about what that indicates.
Yeah, they're pretty fun.
We pay custodians like $16 an
Laura, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I will call this meeting of the board to order and invite everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of
America
and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would ask the secretary to take the roll.
Christopher Abel,
Here.
Biff Hansen,
Here.
Matthew Phipps,
Present.
Keith Shaw,
Here.
Matthew Spalding, Garrett Trask,
Here.
Tony Vostelka.
Here.
Oh.
Okay. Next up is the public input. Before we start the public input, I'm going to take a moment to apologize for last month because of my imperfect enforcement, let alone repetition of the rules for public input. So I provide these friendly reminders to everyone. Please limit yourself to 5 minutes. I will certainly warn you when you have 1 minute left. Not really interested in being timekeeper, but that way you know, and then I ask you to try and conclude your remarks. It's not my goal to cut anybody off when they hit 5 minutes, but please try to stay within the time. This reminder is, of course, that we are here a limited forum, and that we ask that your subject matter be limited to things over which the board has jurisdiction or oversight. And last, please, no name calling. I believe we can all disagree without being disagreeable. Okay? And so saying, I'd like to start public input. We have a request from Christine DeMay, I believe. Okay, we will go on to the second request from Jacob Pusto. Did I say that correctly?
It's Pusto, actually.
Pusto. My apologies.
Jacob Pusto, 1423 North 3rd Street. I have learned that there are some persons and organizations who wish to remove books like All Boys Aren't Blue from the Lincoln School Library. It's been called pornography, and those who defend this book are often called pedophiles or groomers. And all I can say is that these accusations are inappropriate, morally inept, and wholly dishonest to what this book is. I've actually read it. I can testify that it is not pornography. The Oxford English Dictionary implies the words "and any work" to hold a purpose of being exploitative or stimulating. Only 2 chapters in this whole book contain sexual content and are there for alternative purposes, such as learning how to deal with abusers and holding them accountable, or reflecting on how sex education in schools has its issues. Though I agree that some passages are very detailed, to say the least, and that we should have open discussions on what kind of the content or material can be permitted in schools. To call these passages, which were last recited, out of context and out of order is not only wrong, but it ignores the fact that these are not meant to be stimulating. Furthermore, To call this book pornography ignores its purpose. It is a collection of memoirs that focus on the author's experiences of growing up both Black and queer in America. It legitimizes the lives and experiences of marginalized communities in America, and by extension in Manitowoc, by making them seen and heard. It is a book of wisdom and love, which seeks to impact communities, their friends, and their families. You cannot call this book pornography when more than a quarter of it is just love letters from the author to their family members for being so supportive in their upbringing. That is not pornography. That is love. I do not think it's best to take advice from those who think reciting out of context passages makes for good literary analysis, nor who use words like pornography or groomer without actually acknowledging what they mean and their consequences, or those of groups like Moms for Liberty who have previously challenged and removed books across American schools such as To Kill a Mockingbird, various World War II history books, and an illustrated version of the Diary of Anne Frank. This book, All Boys Aren't Blue, is a wonderful book. It's an entertaining read, a valuable resource for many, and something I do not think should be removed from any high school library. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sarah Weinberg.
Sarah Weinberg, MEA, the Teachers Union President for the Manitowoc School District. I'm just here to encourage you. I would really like to see you to start to work together with the community. I think the community feels very left out right now, both parents and just general community members, on where our district is heading. I would like you to continue to work together with your staff. Your staff doesn't want to be blindsided. They want to know what opinions are, what's happening, and be informed. And continue to work better together and with each other. Because together we will build a stronger district where everyone feels welcome. Staff will want to stay here, and other school districts will start to look at us again as a model district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Barbara Post.
For the Barbara Post, 825 Wilson. For the sake of the students and the community, has true inclusion been implemented this year district-wide, where all students, not just special needs, but all students, have a place with their peers in the appropriate age grade level classroom, with modifications and strategies so those students can achieve and succeed. It is peer driven. They feed off each other. If they have the same age group with them, they know. I've been in that. I know how they work. And it can happen. It can be successful. Or is it the same old system you had before? You put them separate classrooms, they're in for a little while, or you even send them to separate schools. The emotionals go to this one and that. They're not with their peers. True inclusion gives the student the tools and the knowledge to achieve and believe in themselves. It is the peer interaction that makes this possible. Teamwork and problem solving together. This gives students the reassurance in themselves and their peers are accepting and achieving all together. It leads to teamwork, problem solving. They need to know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate for their age group. They need reassurance from everybody. Positive, you got this. Believe in yourselves. Teamwork, they're problem solving together. I've been there, I've been in there with those kids that did that. They worked together and they were successful. You show students how to be leaders and teammates, achievers. Education is the key to success. Without it, you stay as you were. A true educator knows this. We need to have true educators working with these kids that can believe in themselves and put it out there for them. I know the world has changed, but you need to evolve with that change. Now we have social media, and most of those kids that we didn't help out are on social media. That's what they believe is the truth, everything on social media. I ride my bike, and you know that, okay? In the last 4 weeks, I've talked to people, students that I actually worked with. One's out, I think, homeless. One is on amphetamine. I mean, it's just like, if we would have caught these kids when we needed to catch those kids, we would be further ahead now. I do believe myself. Why am I here? Because I care. Individually caring and respecting everyone. Always believe in oneself, because you are the only one that will ever be you. Treat people as you treat yourself. We are all here today. Look inside. What do you truly feel in your heart of hearts? Are you doing the right thing? What are you doing? This is your mindset check. I've talked to this before, mindset check. Be responsible for what you do and say, and trust is garnered when the truth is told. I know that I have a bachelor degree. I know I was an educator. I tried very hard, and I connected with a lot of kids. And like I said, and I was just talking to a girl, and she's a senior at Lincoln, and I won't say who it is, but I told her that she has to hang in there and get that diploma. And she told me that someone else just took their lives. I mean, we're losing these kids faster and faster, and if you're not aware of that, you should get out and just ride on, I'm on the south side. If you ride on the south side, you will see how things have just went downhill. So that's all I have to say, and thank you for listening again. But I hope things start changing, because we really need to change. We're losing our kids.
Thank you. And Braden Meyer.
Hello, Brandon Meyer, Vice Chair, Montpelier, Manitowoc County. I'm glad we're finally getting some attention for fighting the grooming of children from leftist activists. That means we're doing an effective job. So imagine this. A kid is riding the bus to school. He has his face pressed against the window because he saw something outside that piqued his interest. The bus turns a corner and goes over an unexpected pothole. Doing so causes the kid to his head to move up and hit a piece of metal, keeping the bus and window together. If the pothole is big enough, it may not only hurt the kid, but it could cause damage to the vehicle. That pothole is a concern for public safety. I'm sure you would all want that problem to be taken care of, and wouldn't mind setting part of your budget to fix it, whether it is city, county, or school property. Investing in infrastructure of all kinds is essential in a society. Take a look at buildings. If a building is unsustainable on the fiscal side, why fight to keep it open? If you are presented with a plan which will save millions of dollars to go from 6 to 5 elementary schools and move to a building that is safer, practically paying for itself fiscally and safety-wise, why fight that? Is it because you think taxpayers are part of an infinite pool of cash you could keep taking each time you prefer spending money over saving hours? Another reason this is even being fought is because the superintendent who proposed this plan was not a member of the far left. He had the experience without a leftist ideological agenda. That allowed the district to make real progress for the first time in years. The assistant superintendent was also a great help for the same reasons. Every time progressives take over, they are highly anti-progress, as this situation is proving. We need to implement a facilities plan which will fix the critical infrastructure needs of our district, not kick the can down the road for another 20 years like the pre-2022 administrations did. When you kick the can down the road for critical infrastructure needs, that enlarges the threat to public safety and fiscal needs of our district. Lives could be at stake if people are inside of a building, then suddenly the roof collapses onto them due to neglect to fix it. When that teacher came and spoke to this board last month, I agreed with everything she said. The time to act is now. not 20 years from now. Do not put off investing in the future of the children of our district. It is time to get our act together and stop pandering to the far-left special interest groups that are anti-progress, anti-fiscal responsibility, anti-safety, and anti-common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. That exhausts the request for public input? Any other public input? Any other? One more time, then I will call public input closed. Thank you all. And we will move on to number 5 in the agenda, which is requests to amend. Do we have any requests from any member of the board to amend the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. And you see on the consent agenda, there are 5 sets of minutes. There's the payment of vouchers, there's the monthly donation list, personnel report, out-of-state travel request, and the policies brought forward from the Policy and Personnel Committee meeting on the 3rd. Anything anybody would like removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will look for a motion.
I'll move that we pass the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda? Second. Thank you, gentlemen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved, which proves it works the way it's supposed to. All right, next we have a report from our student representative, or we don't.
We don't.
Well, they're coming, I promise. Next, we have the report from the superintendent. I would do the same joke, but let's just keep moving forward because first we have Ms. Schroeder's with the forward data presentation. Yes, you go.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
You all have the data in your packet. Several of the members of the curriculum committee are here. We went into this data in some depth already. So I want to give you just a little bit of background and then I'll take any questions you have. I was at a CISA event on Friday. They were talking about the cut scores a little bit more and we talked about that at the curriculum committee. Just a little history. In 2012, there was a big change in the forward cut scores. At that time, they were trying to make them be a better match to the national standards. And at that 2012 timeframe, we were one of the lowest states as far as expectations for students. So they raised the bar pretty substantially in 2012. This cut score change brings that bar back down is what that does. It doesn't, we don't know how far down, but the idea is changing those cut scores mean that our scores appear to be higher, as does everyone, including the state. And that is for ELA and for math. So we have, I just need you to know that. And so what's hard about that is just meant for us to now be a baseline year. There's no way to compare this data with last year's. I tried to do a little bit of an, looking at how we compare to the state as far as our gaps, but that's really iffy too. So really this is baseline data for us moving forward. Knowing that they didn't change the cut scores for 12 years, I would assume we'll have this baseline for a while and we can move forward and have a comparison in the spring. Any questions about our data?
Yeah, we really wanted to know a comparison, but, you know,
Yeah, me
well,
too.
we can probably live with that. I mean, it indicates that, all the indications are that there was, there was improvement. There was definitely improvement. That's something we want to build on now.
Yes.
Now that we all know we all know what we're doing, and the stuff is in place. So this should be a good year, shouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Heidi, I don't want to kind of drag it out of you. I kind of want to go back to the conversation we had in the curriculum committee. Could you explain about, obviously implementing new curriculum, what the forecast traditionally would be,
Yep.
and then explain Could you just say that publicly, please?
Yeah, we had some good conversation in the meeting about whenever you do introduce a new curriculum, which we did last year with SFA and reading, and we're doing that this year with writing. It is very typical and expected to have some sort of an implementation in that year where you're introducing something new. Staff are feeling de-skilled, and they're having to do a lot of learning. So it is very common for there to be a dip. So I know we had some projections of maybe making a 15% improvement. But the idea that you would expect an implementation dip, and we had an increase in our data, so that's the celebration.
So instead of a dip, I just want to clarify.
Instead of a
So
dip, yeah.
Instead of a traditional dip that's been proven over history, we actually went up a couple percentage.
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure that's clear. Well, would you like to put a number to that?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the scores are.
Well, we
indicate
have to,
that.
we want to make sure it's apples to apples. So we kind of
Yeah,
talked
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
5% is kind of.
Our in-house data with our FastBridge assessment, which is in that very last page of the slide where it shows you SFA compared to FastBridge and Forward, we had about a 5% increase in our reading scores last year in-house. And I would say that matches the Forward increase.
So there's no way to compare how we did with other schools?
Not yet.
And when the next
In
state,
November.
in November,
when
the state.
that- Yep.
That's when the report card comes out.
Okay,
Yep, and when we have that information, then we'll come back with some more of that compiled for you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Hey, Heidi, can you hear me okay?
yes, I can. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, I had a quick question on slide 18. What can you give me your thoughts on any patterns that you see there? I was just looking at some of those numbers and just trying to better understand them, and it seemed like I was really just having a hard time following that.
Can you just tell me what slide 18 has on it?
Final.
Final slide, okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's the one that shows. I can elaborate further if you'd like it.
no,
shows
I
the
see it
scores-
now. I see it now, Tony.
Yeah.
So this is that comparison between our SFA data in the spring, our FastBridge data in the spring and forward. And I don't know if you remember when we talked about FastBridge data in the past, we did 4 assessment windows. And that first, what we called winter window, we saw an increase, but then we lost some of that increase in the final window. So the FastBridge results that are here are the spring results. If I put the winter results in there just a little bit better, I don't expect these to be the same, but I'd like them to be kind of close. So I think that's one of the things that is confusing. However, you have to remember too that SFA is K5, Forward is only 3, 4, and 5 in the elementaries. And FastBridge is also K5. So FastBridge and Forward are testing FastBridge and SFA are testing all of our kids, and Forward is 3, 5. And we did talk in the curriculum committee about, we did see a lot more gains made in our primary grades in SFA. So to see that score be higher makes sense to me. That's kind of an overview of that page. Tony, do you have any specific questions?
Yeah, I was just, looking at Franklin, for example, they appeared to score higher on the SFA and FastBridge, and then the Forward was less. And then when I'm looking at Monroe, they actually scored higher on the Forward than they did on SFA, and kind of neck and neck with FastBridge. So I was just trying to understand if might be a reason for that, or if that's just the way the numbers shook out. It just seems odd that there would be such a difference there. I was just trying to find trends between all the buildings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, because I did that same thing when I was looking at it, and I'm hoping that when we're another year in with SFA and using that assessment and FastBridge, I hope that we see a closer match for those things in all of our schools.
Yeah, and just another question I have, just from your perspective, how challenging is it when the state does things like changing the way they measure things without, and I'm not even sure how much notice we had, but I mean, from my seat, it kind of makes it hard, and I'm sure my peers would probably say the same thing just to compare in recent years.
I think it's really frustrating. I think we all feel that frustration. We all want to have that comparison because it's how we can really say we grew, or like have that sense of this is confirmation that we grew. And at the same time, knowing that it's been 14 years since they changed them, I feel hopeful that we'll have another 14 years before they change them again. So it's frustrating, but I'm hoping it's a one-time shot for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Heidi or Dennis, could you speak at all to how we kind of implemented this process and now we more have a live stream of data compared to more of an autopsy report about how the process is going and how we now kind of have a roadmap or a way to kind of look at the data as it's being brought out, and with more years of this use, we can then have the information to compare to. I think it's a disservice to kind of, I'm not saying you're doing it, I'm saying that if we don't explain how much we've changed the process from a little bit ago to now how we're doing it. Do you think you could speak to that at all?
Well, I think that the changes to the forward exam, they are what they are. If we're looking at more of our in-house process, when you think about that SFA assessing that was being done this year, it being a first year, and as you start that very first quarter, everybody's doing it for the first time compared to how it went in May. Those are two really different experiences. You've got a whole year worth. So I would expect that when we look at our data from this year in this September, I'm very excited. We're doing our fast bridge testing right now. And then the first round of SFA testing is happening at the same time. So we're going to have some fresh data that we can actually compare to a year ago that is the same data. So it's a little bit of a frustrating time, and we just kind of have to power through. And this coming year, we're going to have good data to look at compared to last year.
I think remembering the meeting, you said that 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, you didn't assess at all, or you didn't use fast. I don't know if it was forward or fast. Could you elaborate on that? And then before that, a few years before that, you were using assessments to kind of gauge it. Can you walk through the timeline with me quickly?
Yes, we have not had this level of data with SFA. We have not had this level of data where we've got local data that is happening in classrooms, and all of our classrooms with the same assessment being given. Our former curriculum did not offer that opportunity. There were some performance assessments that were done on students. They weren't, they were used to drive instruction in the classroom, but they weren't used to compare us across the district or to have like that district data, that level data. And also last year, we did not have FastBridge. The year before this last year, we did not have FastBridge. STAR was available, most people didn't use it. So this last year was a year where we, for the first time, had really good local data happening. And then we had that FastBridge assessment also happening. So we've got those things in place now, very solidly moving forward.
Collaboration amongst the district now is very, very high compared
Yes.
to nothing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm getting at.
I mean, this is probably wildly hypothetical, but just be patient. Before we knew about Success for All or any of the other stuff, reading scores were going down, and one of the explanations for why is because the culture in Manitowoc had changed, and there was a higher degree of racial diversity, poverty, and single parent families that were not doing well. In fact, there was a study done that indicated that about 48% of the people in households in Manitowoc didn't make enough money to meet basic needs. So that was a hypothesis in a way. And then there were other people who came along and said, well, it's the same in this place and it's the same in that place, and they're doing better than us. But one thing that sort of makes me ask the question is that we got on reading above or at average on the elementary schools. Jackson got 50.3%. Riverview got 52.4%. Monroe got 47.3%, But Jefferson, which is a school I know fairly well, my kids went to kindergarten there, Jefferson got 28. And the one thing that characterizes Jefferson is it's always been the poor kids' school. It's always been the one that's most racially and culturally diverse, et cetera, et cetera. So does that support in some ways the old argument that kids weren't doing well because of? I mean, how do we explain that Jefferson is 28 and Riverview is 52? And the further question I want to ask is, if that's the case, if kids, you know, who are more impoverished have less cultural advantages, are doing 28 while Riverview is doing 52, should we do SFA on steroids at Jefferson? I mean, I'm just speculating here and raising a possible, you know, hypothesis to look into, but I just want your reaction to that.
I think we are doing SFA on steroids at Jefferson, and this is why I think that. I think that because Jefferson is an AGR school, and so because they are an AGR school, they have smaller class sizes in K3. They have more classroom teachers than Jefferson and Franklin both do. And they have, while they have a higher population of, let's say, Hispanic students, they also have 3 English language teachers because of that high number. So for all of these things that you're mentioning that could be potential obstacles for that school, we are doing all that we can to support those students.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Yeah, I think that they have an abundance of resources. They've got an amazing staff that loves these kids and is working hard for them. So I think it would be nice someday when Jefferson is not known for being that school, because there's so many wonderful things about Jefferson.
Yeah, okay.
So I do want you to know that they do have a lot of resources, and they did make gains this past year. And I know that a lot of their gains again were made in that primary grade, and they're not showing up in our forward data. So we hope that we get to see some of that data that reflected in the data next year.
Okay, so full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead, absolutely.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on to the next fun and exciting subject, budget update.
Memo is attached in board book, and this is the same memo that we went over in pretty great depth in the finance and facilities meeting a couple of weeks ago. So we're at the point now where we're sort of sharpening all the pencil on all the information. I have, you know, like taking a closer look at open enrollment, summer school type figures, some final staffing figures, and just finishing up the preliminary budget. So that'll be published in the paper in the next 2 weeks in advance of the budget hearing, and then that draft will be taken to the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting next week, and then we'll have budget hearing and approval of the preliminary budget or adjustments on the 8th of October.
When is open enrollment?
Open enrollment, the main period happens in spring for students or for health insurance.
We don't have those numbers yet?
For open enrollment, we do have them pretty close, but we always depend upon that third Friday count.
Okay.
So I'm working with our open enrollment specialist this week to just say, like, okay, where are we at tentatively, to try to get an idea. So I always do tend to budget a little high on open enrollment, just, you know, because it's better to be a little high than to be really low. So, you know, we'll be able to tighten our estimates on those items. The challenge this year, the unique challenge, is that, you know, through the settling of staffing, we've had about $400,000 come off of what we have in our staffing pool, but then we have taken on an additional services for staffing in exchange. So it's, you know, instead of paying regular salaries and benefits, we're paying the services instead. So sometimes where we save in one area, the cost shifts, but we do have some savings in benefits in some cases. So that has been a unique challenge this year. Yes.
Hey, I have just one question,
Yeah.
or I have one statement I want to make that, you know, the proposed budget has a deficit of $1,938,938 and, well, whatever. You know, basically $2 million in the red. I don't think I can vote for, you know, a budget that's in the red. And I'm just wondering, you know, we had the referendum and it was a huge referendum and it was so big that people were upset about it. People in the community were upset about it. Why isn't that money being put into this to eliminate this deficit?
So let me first address that. When you're looking at the overall deficit between all funds, revenues and expenditures, it's a little bit of not exactly the best point to look at for the full operational budget. So our operational budget right now has a deficit of 700, let me find the exact figure right here. Well, without the Kids Ahead funding and common school funds, our deficit truly for Fund 10 is $645,949, okay? And we're hoping that will come down a little bit with final staffing adjustments, but it will depend upon revenues and other things. When you look at other funds, like we'll have food service fund, that'll have a deficit of about 150,000. Fund 46 in here is operating at a deficit as well as Fund 21. Just to clarify for that, we're not really, for our operating budget where the operational referendum funds are tied, we are levying to the max at this point with this budget.
Yeah, but don't we have to cut that? I mean, what do we do?
We are going to. So we've already had, as I mentioned in the memo, we've already had a lot of discussions internally where as we have declining enrollment, because that's our largest challenge, that we're going to have to look closer at our staffing ratios, class sizes, and all that stuff for the coming years. So, yes, I mean, I'm concerned about that. We've talked very closely about that, and you know, it's just something we have to continue to look at, especially as our enrollment continues to decline.
I just want to get kind of the conversation going because we talked about this in committee, but I kind of wanted to hit some of the highlights and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
But essentially, we broke $100 million as a budget. We're going to be over at 103 now. Essentially, is our budget now. From when I started on the board, I think it was like in the 80s. But obviously, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's over $100 million now. And our expenditures have gone up about 10%, about $10 million. And you state from high inflation and goods and services, and the staff getting a raise of 4.12 CPI increase. That was just kind of what you put down for that. And then I wanted to say that as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about that you said you were going to be maxing out the levy authority that was given from the referendum. So is that correct?
Yeah, it's I think I had a little bit of a reduction because what I'll do with common school funds that come out of fund balance and get Kids Ahead, that 119,000, that would come off of our full levying authority, you know, in my calculations here for this.
But just for the general public, so what Mr. Carey just asked is like, don't we have money from the levy authority? And I'm saying that we're maxing it out with this proposed budget already. So that's what I want to clarify. So that's what she's trying, so she's trying to max it out.
The calculations bring all of that in, so, yes, and the board would, you know, as the board considers what they want to pass for the budget, you know, obviously if we have a deficit that comes out of fund balance, but also the board, you know, you can look at that because it's staffing and we need to look at that as, usually staffing is not a one-time expense because that's ongoing.
Yeah.
You look at, looking at the correct size and staffing for your fleet of teachers and or just overall staffing for the district, you could look at it as a one-time expenditure, and we just obviously need to take a closer look at it for next year.
Are you following up?
Yeah, I'm not done.
Okay, if you got to follow.
Well, I wasn't done, I just got interrupted. But anyways, so what I wanted to talk about next was Fund 46. That was our, capital improvements, kind of where we were gonna try to move some money for improving the infrastructure of this district, which is crumbling, which we've had quite a bit of data on that. We've done a lot of research. And through our strategic plan we did in the last 2 years, we said, hey, we need to start moving some money over to the buildings and grounds so we can make some improvements on our infrastructure, so we can have a happy place, a safe place for our children to go to school. However, that $1.5 million has been taken away from that, the budgetary amount of 1.5 has been taken away from buildings and ground, or Fund 46. But you did say, what's the 2.5 million that you'd be shifting? Can you speak to that?
So we did, in finalizing 23-24 budget, we were able to shift $2.5 million over to Fund 46. So we'll be aiding on that money. So that definitely helps us out from an aid
So
standpoint
that's last year's?
on last year's
Okay,
budget.
so that's last year's, but now, this budget, you're saying you're pulling the 1.5 away because there just isn't money there, is that correct?
Correct, you are correct, but there's $2.5 million in Fund 46 that can be used for those same types of expenses where it was taken from in Fund 10.
Okay. Okay, so that was that question. Thank you.
So that in part is an answer to people that think we should be acting faster on repairing the structures. I mean, honestly.
We will still be able to make a significant mark on the work on capital improvements this year with those funds.
That wasn't spoken for already with the camera systems or the scoreboard or the auditorium? Was that already spoken for though?
That, the 2.5 is in addition, short of a small amount of money, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Are you good?
I'm good for the moment.
Okay. Mr.
Sure,
Shaw?
she answered my question, thank you.
Okay. I just want to point out to everyone that's paying attention that the budget that will get published in the HTR is a preliminary or proposed budget. It is not the final budget. So understand that's before the board sharpens their scalpels and starts trimming here and there a bit. Yeah. Any other questions?
Did you want to talk about food service at all?
Yeah, we got a new person.
Food service, we are at a little bit of a loss on there, around 100 and, I gotta grab my number here, just over $100,000. So, we're still waiting from final certification from DPI on our ISP, and that determines our funding rate per meal. So that'll have an impact. Both with Fund 50 and Fund 10, we have the lease program with Enterprise too. So for food service, is the purchase of trucks or the rental of.
I came from the food service fund, you're saying?
Yes, that comes exclusively from food service.
That's a pretty, thank you for pointing that out. That's all I have.
Good. Okay, then we're going to move on to the director's reports. You have the director's reports there. They are chomping at the bit to answer any questions you may have. I mean that in the nicest way possible, probably not the best metaphor to choose.
Right after food service, yeah.
Yes, especially that.
Even better.
So any questions for our charming and delightful directors?
Just a comment. I thought the in-service this year was outstanding. So for all the directors and the people who put that together, Mike and the directors, the level of staff, just visible energy was positive. Yeah. The showcase at the Capitol Civic Center was outstanding. The attitude of the staff I just thought was tremendous. Yeah. The camaraderie was obvious. So kudos to all of you and to the staff who put that together, because I thought it was actually a very good. Carrie, thank you for your introductory statements at
the one I didn't know.
At the in-service when you knew 20 minutes before you had a chance to do it. Yeah. Spot on, it was very good.
I apologize to Sarah for taking more than 5 minutes.
But thanks to all of the people who put that together, because it was very good. It was very good.
Oh, thanks.
Anything else?
I have a question. who is the director of Office of Communication? Who is that?
You're asking me?
Yeah, who is that? Director's report from the Office of Communication. Who is that?
That's Lisa Singh.
Lisa Singh. Oh, it is. Okay, okay.
That's a director position now? Curious. No. Yes.
No, it's not.
Okay. That will be attended to for future director reports.
All right.
Directors'
All right.
reports. They should be plural, possessive, plural.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. Next up, district activity update. There's lots and lots and lots of sports going on. We are just into our second week of school. Can't possibly cover all of that. I believe there is a WASB event at, is it called the Millhome Summer
Millhome,
Club
yeah.
on, I think it's the 24th?
This is the 27th.
24th.
Oh, it's the 24th, okay. Are you going?
I was letting you know about it.
Yeah, okay.
So there are some activities for the board to be advised of. And of course, if you enjoy school sports, go to any one of our schools and look up their activity calendar and you'll find lots of stuff to go to. Lots of fun out there. Okay. Moving forward to unfinished business, we had nothing. Moving on to new business. This next piece of business will be a little strange for the board, less strange for those of you in attendance, because you don't have as much information on it as we do, but I'll turn that over to our business manager.
Yes, we had an offer to purchase a small parcel of land owned by the school district. So we initially discussed it in the Finance and Facilities Committee. And it was asked to bring it to the full board because the policy reads that it comes to the full board first and then is really referred back to committee. So we're just sort of doing the agenda item shuffle here and just following policy, and we're gonna put it on the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting on the 19th for a closed session.
One of the things that came out of the committee, and as we discussed, Matt and I made the motion to bring it back here because we have a district policy that says that the district, when not using land, the deposition must be, we have to get rid of it. If we're not using it, we're not using it for the value of education and students, and it's just sitting there. That policy indicates that it's our job as a district to get rid of that. So my two quick questions that we talked about, did we ever post this land for sale? Or did an owner just know that we have it and said, hey, I want to buy it?
We've never posted it for sale. What happened is we had a review of all of our vacant parcels of land about 2 years ago, and it came up we had an appraiser just give some information on the value and in considerations the district might want to take with the property. So, then it was just, the conversation had come up and the landowner had reached out at some point and said that they were interested in purchasing that parcel of land.
Because that's similar to what, in my experience in the past, is we would have parcels of land. The community people would know that this land was owned by Mantua Public School District, and they would approach the school district. Then the school district would have it appraised, go to the board, go into closed session to talk about it, and decide what they're gonna do with the rent. So I guess that's why we said we're gonna come back here, and if it's something that this board is gonna consider, take a look at, and we do offer this land for sale, then it's gotta go back to the committee and brought into a closed session to make that owned. Or do we open it up and say, okay, do we get a new audit? Do we say what the land is worth today versus a year ago? I don't know that procedure. Legally, I don't know whether we have to open it up again for a new assessment and then say that's what it's worth. Do we say anybody in the community can buy it, or do we just let the neighbor who wants it buy it? I don't know those legal parameters.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And the policy is pretty vague.
Yeah, it's very vague.
It's very
It just says we have to
vague.
get rid of it.
I can see that we have a number of, I'd say like 6 to 10 small little parcels of land, most of which have like no value to the district really, and you know, they're either like enclosed by other land, swamp land, lots of things, so I'm happy to help with it in any way the board would like me to.
Well, I want to point out that the policy explicitly states if we receive a written offer to purchase district policy, that must come first to the full board.
Right.
And the board will refer it to the finance committee. So really, the action we are looking for this evening is a motion and a second to refer this to the finance
back to the
committee.
committee
Where
who brought us
yes,
to you guys.
because we looked at it
Because
the
it was
first
an
time in
open
committee when we ought not have. Yes. Okay.
So I'll make a motion to bring it back to committee under closed session to discuss it.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to refer it to finance and closed session.
Just to talk about it a little bit. So I think 2 years ago, what the consensus was, they wanted to get a state of affairs of see what was going on, what property was owned by the district. I think that's why that generated that audit of where's the land floating around from neglect over years or just from oversight, whatever it was. So I think it was just to kind of get up to snuff with knowing what the properties were so that we were all aware of it. But like you said, once we hit an offer to purchase, that generates the movement that we're at now. So I do think the people that made the offer to purchase, that they followed the procedures, that now we actually have an offer. Now we will discuss it in closed session, and hopefully we can get a remedy, we can get a decision, and then we can move this process forward. But we're not trying to, wreck the deal or anything. We're just trying to do it correctly, and we're trying to do it privately so that we don't disclose the information right away. So I'm sorry for the inconvenience to the offer to purchase. However, we're going to do it in closed session is what we're doing the motion for.
Yep.
I don't even want to say this, but because it's going to open a can of worms. I appreciate us following the policy, but in my head, I'm going, if a piece of land is owned by taxpayers, shouldn't, and we're willing to sell a piece of land somewhere, shouldn't taxpayers know that this land is up for sale rather than maybe just somebody who lives next to it? Or, you know what I'm saying? I'm just throwing that out there, and I'm just feeling a little bit like it's owned by everybody.
If I could respond.
Sure.
It is my belief that that's what this policy does.
It does.
If someone knows that we have a piece of property and they buy it, it comes to the full board where we say, that's an interesting offer. Let's refer that to finance so the public is made aware that we have a piece of property that that we might be selling.
So this
we
is
can
not a
generate-
done deal.
No.
In no way, shape,
Not
or
at all.
form. Yeah.
So,
This is just.
It hasn't even begun yet until we start
so other
talking.
people would have that ability to.
Right, absolutely.
All right.
And even, you know what, Bev, you could suggest somebody else make an offer to purchase. That would make it worse.
I would be happy to see a bidding more for any of
Oh,
our
yeah.
offers.
I just want to make sure everybody has a chance.
Yeah, but that's why it goes back.
And I can provide that list of what was done 2 years ago to the board too, since there are new members, that might be helpful to see as well.
Yeah, we had a piece on the other side of Lincoln.
Hey, but we have a motion
I
on
know.
the table, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying
I'm
to
sorry.
stick to that
Yeah,
motion.
I'm
so we
sorry.
get it done. Okay, so any other discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Yeah.
Hearing none, that will be referred to the Facilities and Finance Committee. All right. Next, it's a report out and items that are being brought forward from the August 19th Facilities and Finance Committee that I was just referring to.
Okay.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes, thank you. The next one is the legal representation. We discussed this in the Finance Committee. It was a non-majority vote to bring it to the board, but still warrants that because it's a tie to come to the board as a vote or as a serious proposal. every school district has, so I'll be making two motions here, but every school district has a template of things that should be brought forth to the board in a routine manner so that services are not overlapped. So in the past, when we discovered that the legal representation contract had, or was going to lapse, there was a discussion about changing legal services or whatever to try to make this contract again valid, following that template, because according to past information, the template with that issue had really not been followed. The discussion of legal services and contracts is due the first meeting in August of every year. It's on that template. So my first motion is very, very easy. I don't even know if we need a motion to follow the template, but I'm going to make it anyway, is that we follow the template developed by the Manitowoc Public School District and State of Wisconsin over many, many years, that the first meeting in August, we discuss legal services. The discussion through legal services is brought to the board president. The board president brings the issue of legal services to the board for discussion and possible action. Follow the template as directed. That's my motion. That's my first motion. That we follow that template, bring the organization, bring that representation, that legal representation to the board, the first formal meeting in August, presented by the board president for discussion and possible action.
And so your motion is to formally set that at the
That's correct.
regular August meeting.
Correct.
We take a look at our legal representation for the coming year.
That's correct.
Okay, and I'll second that because I think it's good to formalize this.
My only statement will be that I would think that it's in the purview of the district administrator to make that decision each year. So I'll be voting no for this. But I understand the merit, but we don't get governed by the template of the year. So that's what I don't like that idea of just going along to get along to follow a template. I understand the importance of bringing it up, but I think that's something that the district administrator should bring up or the chairman of the school board. If there was a problem that needed to be addressed, not the template.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Hey,
Okay, so 4-2, that passes.
And my second motion, when I first brought this up last month and also at the facilities meeting, was to look at possibly changing our legal services to one agency. My motion has changed a little bit. In light of us being now into a school year, for the 24-25 school year, my motion, because we passed the time when legal representation was to be signed in August, we're into the school year. My motion is to maintain and retain the services that we currently have continue the services that we currently have for general education with Von Briesen and Roper, and the special education student services with Below and Vetter. The same two legal agencies that we have had this year. There's issues that are out there, there's issues that pending, that both agencies are working on. At this point in time, I don't see a need to unify that, but keep the services as we currently have for the 24-25 school year.
And that's your motion and your argument.
That's my motion and argument all in once.
I will second that motion. And since you've already spoken to it,
Argument.
I would only add that the reality is we actually get legal services from 3 groups because WASB is always happy to help us as well. And I, in the time that I have been on the board, have found all of them to be invaluable. So I like the services we're getting from them all, and I'm happy to support this.
I just have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I just want to explain to the public that this is a great example of the committee structure not working correctly. Previous years, we had a group of a whole and we made decisions as a whole school board. However, the new board coming in, we would like to go to committees. The committee went to committee, and the chairman of the school board participated in the committee meeting, so that made the votes 2-2, which that means it dies in committee. However, Mr. Shaw brought it to the full board because he wasn't happy with his verdict from committee. And this is a great example of how you bring things without even using a committee at all to the school board at a regular meeting and then push it through under their own ideas. So this is a great example if anybody wants to know how you push things through school boards, not using committees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have a question on services. Is there a fee that we pay to those two groups, whether or not we use their services?
My understanding is we are being billed for services rendered and not a stipend.
That's correct.
Okay, so we only pay if we use them.
Right.
Okay.
That's in.
My response to what you just said, Mr.
We
Phipps?
pay
Well,
about
WASB, we have a-
14 grand every year.
Right.
As an association fee, right,
Yep, thank you.
absolutely.
My response to Mr. Phipps is, we're in this situation because of the organization that we had. We're in this situation because Committee of the Whole hired another group as a Committee of the Whole. So what I'm saying is you can say, this is a result of the committee system. We are in this situation because of how it used to run. Because decisions were made at a meeting rather than a discussion at a committee. So there's two sides to every coin.
Which I would like to highlight that Mr. Shaw is quite happy now with that. The agreement has been over now, and we were very happy with Jim Macy's services doing the negotiations for the disclosure of our superintendent. So we are happy with the services because we met the date, obviously, of August, so I understand why it would make sense to change now. However, we had and I should say, personally, I had no problems with our legal services up to this date, and I had no need or want or inclination that we weren't happy with our services. However, there was an agenda to get rid of the services, but I think we were quite happy with the services that we got on the specialization throughout the process of the disclosure of our superintendent. So I just want to highlight that.
And I see no argue with you because this.
I understand.
Points are not valid, so why argue with invalid statements?
Thank you for your statement.
Okay. Anything further? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, say nay. Okay.
I
So-
didn't get Tony.
Tony, were you an aye or an nay?
Thank you.
Aye.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. That, I don't want to tell you you're done, I want to ask.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I almost told you, and that would be just plain murder. Okay, and now the report out from the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mike shared a good report with us. I think you've seen that in the consent agenda, his HR report. And we appreciate him filling as many positions as he can to start the school year. I think we're only down one.
The reality is if we're going to teach language path, that was an increased position because of increased needs that we haven't been able to fill. And for read 180, a reading position, we were not able to fill. Other than that, for our professional staff, they're there. So we're blessed. We feel pretty dang good about it.
Good. Two other things that happened at the committee besides the 10 items, the mirroring policies that we went through consent agenda. I am looking for information from all board members. We tabled the Parent Bill of Rights. Rather than just come back and argue about a new Bill of Rights, I'm looking for ideas that people might want to include in some type of information that we can give to parents on things that they can ask the school board about. Okay? I've kind of asked Lee to go through the current Bill of Rights that were there and find our policies that already contain these things. And there were some things obviously in that Bill of Rights that are not contained within policy, but I'm looking for, the committee is going to look for middle ground on something. Is there something we can come up with that will keep school boards happy so every time there's an election, things don't change? Now, if we call it a Bill of Rights, we call it, maybe we just give information to parents that principals, schools are open to situations when you have something with your child that you may not agree with, something being taught, something going on. You have the right to go in and talk to that administrator and try to find a solution. And we've done that forever. We've done that. The history of this district is they've always respected parents and done that. So is there a way that maybe we have to formalize that and put something together that people can know is there, that they have those rights to go in and talk? So that's issue number one that we will discuss in committee. The other is a dress code issue that came up. And as was discussed and pointed out at our committee meeting, dress codes are going to be tough. If you're talking student dress code, you're talking teacher dress code, we'll probably have to combine those, but there's a lot of decisions that have come down lately on dress codes, and the First Amendment is front and center in most of those decisions. So I'm also looking for ideas from this board on what we can do to come up with an effective dress code so people understand that something may be offensive to them, but it may not be offensive to somebody else. And we sometimes look at something and we look at it differently than what it really means. So we're going to attack that issue too. I don't know if we'll come up with a solution to any of this, but perhaps we can come up with something that gets us in the middle and makes people happy.
And before you say anything, I just want to clarify, you are inviting those ideas and suggestions from the board, but not at this time because it would violate open meeting law because we can't discuss it here. It's not on the agenda.
It's not, no, I want those
Oh, yeah.
to the
Sent
committee,
to
not, we're not going to
Yes,
take time.
okay, all right. I just want to be careful that we
Thank you.
don't violate.
Yes.
Don't we
Meeting.
already have board policy for both of those issues?
You're
Yeah.
wandering into
Sorry.
discussion, so
Sorry.
I don't mean to stop you,
Sorry.
but I don't want a lawsuit.
Sorry.
Okay,
That's all I have, Mr. President.
thank you. And now,
Curriculum Committee, we have nothing to report out. The only action that we took is to vote affirmatively in favor of Chris Sabel, who organizes and coordinates the DC trip for the middle school, eighth grade, wants to go to a different company that offers a better deal. Wants to go to Boston to hear their pitch and see what they do. And it's all paid for by EF, which is the travel company. But she needed approval by the committee in order that expenses for substitute teacher be paid while she's out of town. What, Mike?
I'm just thinking, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. Well, it looked like, hey, what's going on?
All right, Barry,
But, yeah, so we did approve that out-of-state travel in the consent agenda.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm sorry. Can I ask a question about the facilities? That was in the report for the facilities. That was two
sure,
items.
absolutely.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Shaw, I had a question. Did we have any update on the central office vote that we did a month and a half, 2 months ago?
I have nothing to report on that. I have received no information. We haven't done any further activity on that.
At the end, under anything further, you can certainly request that they go on the agenda for the next facilities and finance.
Okay.
Just so you
Just had a question.
I would hope to. We're gonna take more looks at it. Okay, so now we move on to 10A, superintendent vacancy next steps, information, discussion, possible action. Enclosed herein, and always if we are dealing with district employees, we want to make sure we are being respectful of their privacy and appropriate consideration of performance or evaluative data. That is why on the agenda is the possibility for a closed session if the board feels that is necessary.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Could you summarize the minutes aren't out for the executive meeting that we just had yesterday? And it was at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yes.
Could you summarize that meeting just in your phrases, please? In open session, because that was an open session meeting that I wasn't able to attend.
Yes.
I was at work.
Yes,
It was a closed
the
session.
the executive committee
It was
met.
all in closed
It
session?
was a closed session. It was minutes for.
The executive committee met.
Yeah.
They adjourned a closed session to discuss recommendation. They then adjourned from closed session and came out into open session where I believe it was Mr. Shaw moved that we appoint a district employee as interim superintendent. That was Mr. Tennis. It was seconded here, and it prevailed by a 2-to-1 vote to recommend to the full board to take that action.
Okay.
So if the board wants to discuss the performance and the qualifications of Mr. Tennis before considering that, it would be necessary to go into closed session. Yeah, absolutely no attempt to keep any of that secret. I'm glad that you asked it that way, and I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And that, by the way, exhausted the full meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the whole thing.
Would you like me to read the motion that came out of our executive session?
I want to find out if we're going into closed session or not first.
Yeah, I move we go into closed session.
Okay, so we have a motion to go into
I'll
close.
do second.
We have a second. The Board of Education may convene a closed session for the purpose of considering the following matter: employment, promotion, compensation, performance, evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is authorized pursuant to section 1985 1C of the Wisconsin statutes. We will be considering superintendent vacancy, next steps. Board of Education will then vote to adjourn from closed session and will reconvene in open session. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We have to do a roll call, and then I have to bend Lori's ear to find out what we're gonna do after we vote.
Christopher Abel.
Aye.
Biff Hansen.
Aye.
Matthew Phipps.
Yes.
Keith Shaw.
Aye.
Matthew Spalding. Carrie Trask.
Yes.
Tony Vestalka.
Aye.
Okay. For everyone in attendance, it was my hope that we would adjourn to a separate room so we don't keep, while the weather's nice, I'm sure you don't care about standing out there in the parking lot. It was our goal not to keep kicking you out, but for us to adjourn to another room. One of us attending telephonically, can we move that into that room?
Yes.
Do a room?
Our IT department is going to help us with that.
Okay,
Conference
all right.
room on.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So we will go away so you don't have to,
So you'll come back.
and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
We have to come back to adjourn regardless, but we will be coming back.
Will there be a report out?
Just waiting for our secretary to return. We are experiencing technical issues. Please stand by. No, not really.
No, we're
Just
not.
waiting for her to get back. If you have a minute after the meeting, I would speak with us. Thank you. All good, Tony?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Okay, thank you. Just making sure, since we bounced you around different rooms now, I just want to make sure we don't lose you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just keeping it on mute because he said there was some feedback on my end.
No problem. Okay, we are back in open session. I will open the floor up. Yes.
I make a motion. There is a motion by the Manitowoc Board of Education to recommend the appointing of Mr. Lee Tennis as the interim superintendent of the Manitowoc Public School District through June 30th, 2025. Mr. Tennis brings a level of intelligence, stability, respect of his colleagues and community leaders within this district. Mr. Tennis is a fully licensed superintendent, is knowledgeable of state and federal guidelines. These demonstrated qualities support this position, represented by the board for Mr. Tennis to serve as interim superintendent of Manitowoc Public School District.
So we have a motion and an argument. One day I'm going to get them to separate them, ladies. Achieve that procedural reality. And we have a second. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
Perhaps adding or amending, which I'm sure he would be friendly to, following reaching a successful understanding between.
I'll
board
accept
and
the
Mr.
amendment.
Tennis.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. That finally works for me.
Oh,
Any
you want to say-
any other
Oh,
member of the
second.
board, anything?
I guess the only thing I would like to say is I thank him for his services as principal, like a high school, and then his services as a director that he's done in the past 2 years. And I would hope that he continues to continue down the path that he's been on, which I would assume that he's going to, about understanding the importance of the facilities and how we do not want a lame duck. We want somebody that is going to continue to get MPST to become a destination school district again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. And we have, since I am the one that has to negotiate the agreement, I will abstain so that I can negotiate in good faith. Okay? So by a unanimous vote, absent the necessary abstention, congratulations, Mr. Tennis. And thank you for those of you who have not switched over to the debate, and those of you here, I want you to know that what this means is we will reach a understanding of the parameters and the financial agreement reality, which will then come to the board for a final vote. And that would be when the interim superintendency would begin. That's just an FYI for everyone. Okay, if there's anything further from any member of the group, for the good of the whole.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying nay. And even I'm not abstaining on this one. We are. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.